I spoke to Albert, who got approved for $47,500 with Divvy without a hard credit pull and without a personal guarantee. That means it doesn't hurt your personal credit and you're not personally on the hook for the money that you charge to the card. And soon you'll see how he pulled off an additional $20,500 approval for a brand new business with zero revenue and the exact data points he used to guarantee $3,000 to $5,000 bumps every 90 days. Oh, and before I forget, if you want to check out the Divvy card for yourself, I dropped a link inside my No PG business card master list. This list has 25 plus cards and counting on it that work just like this one, and you'll find Divvy plus a lot more options that never show up on your personal credit. There's no hard credit pulls, so your personal credit stays untouched. There's no personal guarantee, so you're not personally responsible for the debt. And here's the big one. If your business ever struggles and you have to shut it down for some reason, you can walk away personally debt free. So if you want instant access to the No PG business card master list, again, I'll just leave that link below this video. Now, when Albert walked away from his job in January of 2024, it wasn't a small decision. He was trading a steady paycheck for the unknown. What he did know were two things that kept him moving forward. One, he wanted freedom from the 9 to 5 grind. And then two, he needed serious access to capital to build the businesses he dreamed of. But reality hit hard the moment Albert applied for his first Divvy card. The approval came back at just $2,000 to $5,000. That's the kind of number that makes most people, kind of shrug their shoulders and think, well, this isn't going to change much for me. And honestly, it stung a little for him. After all, the work he put into building his credit profile and positioning his businesses, this wasn't the credit limit he was hoping for. But instead of seeing it as a dead end, he saw it as a starting line. He treated that small approval like a proof of concept, a signal that the door wasn't closed, it was just cracked open. And if that door was cracked, he was going to push it wide open. So fast forward, and that tidy limit grew into something much bigger. Today, Albert holds $47,000 across 2 Divvy accounts. Now, for Albert, this was never about, just getting a credit card. The Divvy approval was fuel for much bigger goals. In his cybersecurity consulting practice, he's charging anywhere from $200 to $250 an hour and teaming up with experts who can handle large projects, especially for hospitals battling ransomware threats. And in his mobility business, Albert isn't thinking small either. He's not content with a handful of contracts. His goal is to turn it into a multi-million-dollar company that can scale and compete. And for Albert, every approval and every bump is, just one more brick in the capital stack that's helping him build the life most entrepreneurs dream about. Now, this is where Albert got to work. Every 2 to 3 months, he picked up the phone and called Divvy. He told them his revenue was growing. He talked about new contracts, new opportunities and bigger projects. He didn't just report what he'd already earned, he shared what he was building towards. And each time, Divvy rewarded that persistence with a higher and higher credit limit and more breathing room. Each call earned him another 3 to 5K. Small wins on their own, but stacked together, they pushed his consulting business credit line all the way up to $26,500. But he wasn't done yet. He spotted an opening most people miss, and it was a loophole. He applied again, this time under his mobility business, but linked it to the very same business bank account. Now, to his surprise, Divvy actually approved it and handed him another $20,500. So that's 2 separate businesses, one shared account, and nearly $50,000 in total credit. But long before Albert applied for Divvy, he was already putting in the work behind the scenes. He understood something most people overlook. Funding isn't just about getting lucky with an approval, it's about making yourself look like the kind of borrower that banks want to say yes to. So he spent months building his foundation and becoming more fundable. Albert kept his FICO scores in the mid to high 700s, consistently hovering in the 799 to 813 range. Now, that didn't happen by accident. It meant keeping his utilization ultra low, paying everything on time, and making sure his report stayed clean. And he limited himself to just a few inquiries. He protected his file so lenders wouldn't see him as desperate for credit. And on the business side, Albert was just as intentional. He set up his DUNS number, registered with NAV, and made sure that he had trade lines reporting. And to him, this wasn't just busy work. It was like building the resume for his company. Every little step added credibility, signaling to the lenders that his business, it was legit and fundable. He didn't cut corners, and that was what gave him the confidence to step into the funding game. So when Albert finally applied, he wasn't walking in blind. He knew his personal and business profiles were dialed in, and that preparation put him in a completely different position than someone, applying without a strategy. Now, this is where things get good. Albert used a playbook that grew his Divvy line to almost $50,000, and anyone can run it. First, he showed spending habits that really built trust with Divvy. So instead of letting his Divvy card collect dust, Albert put it to work. Every month he cycled between $5,000 and $8,000 in spending. That's enough to show Divvy he was serious, but never so much that he risked, getting overextended. He used the card for everyday expenses like utilities, bills, and even furniture. At one point, he even helped a friend's business by putting their big purchase on his card. And this matters because lenders want to see activity. By showing consistent usage without maxing himself out, Albert sent a message: you can trust me with more credit. Every 30 days, the balance auto withdrew from his bank account, and Albert made sure it was always covered. So no late payments. And then he used projected income. So for limit increases, Divvy doesn't verify income. That's a big hack. It's all stated income. No documents required. And in Albert's case, everything happened over the phone too. So he already had over $20,000 a month showing in his linked business account, but he knew if he only gave Divvy that number, he'd be underselling himself. So he shared projections that were much higher. In his own words, he said, I told them like 2 or 3 times what I was actually making because I had the contracts, I had the revenue coming in, I just hadn't received it yet. So I put the projections in there and they were fine with that. And that's what changed everything. Instead of just saying what he'd already made, Albert painted a picture of where his business was headed. And that's how he convinced Divvy to raise his limit again and again. So with Divvy, confidence pays. The bolder the projection that you make, the bigger the approval. And then he leveraged multiple entities. This is probably the biggest breakthrough that came from Albert's story because Albert realized he could apply under more than one business. He linked both his consulting business and his mobility company to the same bank account, and Divvy approved both. That single insight nearly doubled his available credit. And one thing Albert kept pointing out in our conversation is that Divvy didn't feel like dealing with a typical fintech or financial technology company. It wasn't just the approval, it was the way they treated him after the fact. Albert described Divvy's customer service as exceptional. And let's be real, when was the last time you heard someone say that about a credit card company? Most entrepreneurs are used to long hold times, being bounced around departments and talking to reps who barely understand your situation. But with Divvy, Albert said the conversations felt different. The reps were quick, professional, and respectful, and even followed up after the calls. They didn't just take the ticket, they actually made him feel like his business mattered. And Albert said that he had bills to pay and projects to push forward, and waiting weeks on a card wasn't an option. And he loved that Divvy gave him instant access to a virtual card the moment he was approved. That means he could use it immediately for bills, services, or purchases while waiting for the physical card to come in. Now, I want to talk about quick wins that you can copy. Sometimes the best strategies aren't flashy. They're simple moves that you repeat over and over until they work. That's exactly what Albert did. And it's something that you can actually copy no matter what kind of business that you run. So this is for every business owner. Don't sit back and wait for a bank or fintech to decide when you deserve a higher limit. Albert didn't. Every 90 days, he picked up the phone and asked Davy for a bump. No hesitation. No, I'll wait and see. He made it part of his routine, like paying a bill or sending an invoice. And here's the truth: banks reward persistence. So if you want more, you have to ask for it. Also, keep in mind that when you apply for your very first Divvy card, they'll ask you to link your business bank account. And generally speaking, you want to show at least $5,000 per month in business revenue running through that account to get approved. Now, if you're a service-based business or a consultant, don't make the mistake of, underselling yourself by only reporting the money that's already in your bank account. Most business owners do this and it limits their approvals they get. When Divvy asked about his income, he didn't just talk about what he'd already been paid, he included the revenue that was locked in. And here's the key: this isn't just a consulting thing. If you run a service-based business, you probably already have income lined up that doesn't show up in your account yet. For example, a marketing agency with $3,500 per month retainer locked in for the next 6 months, or a real estate agent with $15,000 in commissions pending from closings that are already under contract, or an IT or cleaning company with recurring service agreements on the books. Even think a consultant or a coach with paid in advance packages or scheduled sessions. That's real money, and it should be a part of your projections. Lenders like Divvy don't ask for verification, they take stated income. So if you've done the work to secure those deals, you want to count them. And I think the biggest hack comes in when you have multiple businesses that you operate. This is where Albert pulled off his biggest play. He realized Divvy let him apply under different entities using the same business bank account. So he applied once with his consulting business and then again with his mobility business and got approved for both. So together, those approvals nearly doubled his available credit. So if you run multiple service-based businesses or any type of business, whether it's marketing, IT support, cleaning, healthcare services, or anything else, you can use the same strategy. Each entity can be its own doorway to more funding with Divvy. And I'd say almost 9 out of 10 business owners don't even realize that you can pull off almost the same play with Chase business credit cards. Chase actually lets you get approved for the same business card for each business that you own up to 5 times. And you know what? I just spoke to Joseph, who got $71,000 from Chase with a 3-month-old LLC and no prior relationship with them. So definitely watch the next video right here to learn how he walked away from Chase with a $50,000 approval on a single business card, how Chase surprised him by pulling a second bureau that most people don't expect, and how he landed a face-to-face Zoom meeting with a Chase business relationship manager. Thank you for watching.